Happy Halloween. Yeah, this is about the height of my Halloween spirit. What? Trick or treat? Well, I'm all out of candy. I definitely didn't eat it all myself. Now look, how about instead I review a game about spooky spirits? Well, okay, it's not really spooky, but it does have ghosts. Japanese ghosts. Look, do you want a review or not? It's been nearly 2 years since I last reviewed Yokai Watch. 2 long, cringy years full of terrible videos. Oh boy. Well, I figured Halloween is as good a time as any to revisit the series. So today, we're taking a look at Yokai Watch 2, Psychic Specters. Gara gara ponga, gara gara pong, gara gara ponga, gara gara pong. Background information. Yokai Watch is a series of monster collecting, befriending in this case, RPGs for the 3DS created by Level 5. Yokai Watch 2 is, rather obviously, the sequel to the game Yokai Watch, which was wildly popular in Japan. The sequels, Bony Spirits and Fleshy Souls, yes, they started doing that stupid split version thing, came out in July 2014 in Japan and late 2016 in the US. The third version, Psychic Specters, which is what we're looking at today, came out later the same year in Japan and in 2017 in the US, and Europe received all three in 2017 for some reason. While received lukewarm at best outside of Japan, in its home country, Yokai Watch 2 sold phenomenally, being the best-selling games in the country of that year. For anyone not in the know, yokai are essentially Japanese spirits. I actually did a review on the first game and the anime as well, though after that I kinda stopped following Yokai Watch stuff. I had already fully caught up on the anime and got tired of waiting for new episodes, and when the new games came out, I was busy buying amiibo. I mean, it wasn't my fault. A yokai inspirited me and made me do it. Yeah, let's go with that. Anyway, a lot of things I said for the first game hold true here, and for the interest of keeping this video relatively short, I'll be glossing over some stuff I mentioned in that one. If you want a more in-depth explanation of some game mechanics, or what exactly a yokai is, check those ones. One last thing, while I don't think it was ever flat out stated, it's heavily implied this game takes place after the events of the first game, though you really don't need to play that one first to get the story here. Speaking of, let's move on to this game's plot. Story and characters. Warning, there are story summary spoilers ahead. This game's plot heavily follows the one of the first movie, or the movie follows the plot of the games. I'm not sure which, honestly. After choosing your gender and naming your character, late one night while you're fast asleep, 2 yokai appear and make your yokai watch disappear, as well as erase your memories of it. After a mostly uneventful day of shopping, you encounter a store you never noticed before down a dark alley. Oh boy, I don't like where this is going. Inside, you find a man who offers to sell you a strange watch, before deciding to just give it to you. You can guess what kind of watch it is, right? Okay, spoiler time. It's a yokai watch! Afterwards, he tells you to take the money you were going to pay for the watch and instead go try the gachapon in front of the store, just like the Crank-a-kai from the first game. Let's see what we got. Barter! Why am I not surprised? Oh, never mind. It's the Egghead Whisper again. Can I have my barter back, please? Despite being notoriously bad at it, Whisper once more vows to act as your butler. Even I can be a better butler than you, Whisper. And with that, everyone's memories are restored. Yay! Whisper then begins to drag you all over, reteaching you how to play. Once the mandatory tutorial is over and everyone's memories are restored, you're back in business befriending yokai and collecting medals, and eventually time traveling to fight villainous yokai, participate in the yokai war, and unravel the secrets of the origin of the yokai watch. Like its predecessor, the game is divided into various short chapters, though these ones are more interconnected and coherent than the first game. Your friends take a much less active role in this one. It's not really good or bad, I mean, they were pretty forgettable in the first game, it's just a thing of note. Instead, more characterization and backstory explanation goes to Jibanyan, Whisper, the final boss, Dame Deadtime, and your grandfather, who appear as children because, like I said, time travel. Those last two are particularly interesting. As a villain, I found Dame Deadtime more compelling than McCracken from the original. Her catchphrase gets old fast, though. To achieve her goals, she has an army of yokai known as Wicked Yokai, as well as the two goons who stole your watch, to do her bidding. Your grandfather you meet in the past when he was a kid your age. He wants to be like his superhero Maximus Mask. He dresses up in costume. Huh, what do you know? It is a Halloween video after all. We got ghosts and cosplay. Close enough. I mean, I totally planned this. He even has a pose and everything. It's stupid and actually kind of catchy.
Da, 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 da. Moxie.
He's standoffish and stubborn, but fights against the wicked yokai, and happens to be quite connected to the yokai watch. Anyway, that about covers the major characters. Next, let's move on to how this game is presented. Presentation. Animation and models still look fantastic for the 3DS. It looks pretty unchanged from the original, but that's because they nailed it there. I still think that for when the original game came out, it was one of the better looking 3DS games, right up there with Harvest Moon, Animal Crossing, and Fire Emblem Awakening. Obviously those games all have very different styles, but my point is they all look good. I assume they just copy and pasted most of the game's graphics, though there are some new animations for Nate. Particularly dances, and even one of him picking up a trash can lid and putting it back in place. It's such a minor thing that you wouldn't think they'd bother, but they did. I appreciate that level of polish, especially for the various cutscenes. Looks good. Likewise, a lot of old tracks return for this one, but there are some new tracks. The new music they actually did add is rockin' though. My favorites being for fighting classic yokai, the Maximus Mask theme, and the final boss phase 1. They still have that kind of quirky feel to them, but it feels like they, along with the games as a whole, are more embracing of the uniquely Japanese feel that yokai have. They did a good job of not altering things too much for a Western audience. There was that thing with the quirk though. In terms of voicing, it's kinda hit and miss. Some's pretty good like Nate, Whisper, and Jibanyan. To contrast, the voice acting on these villains is pretty terrible. It's cringy as hell and doesn't sound threatening at all. And of course, I feel the need to once again shout out to my favorite case of terrible voice acting, returning from the previous game, ladies and gentlemen, Lava Lord!
Lava Lord!
Ugh. The game still has that same sense of humor. Sometimes it's clever, and sometimes it relies on toilet humor. Ugh. I really hate it when it does that. Let's move on ASAP. Gameplay. While I can't speak for the opening of the other two versions, this one has you pick a donut at the start of the game, which influences whether the key story points will follow fleshy souls or bony spirits. What a weird way to do this. I mean, it's not necessarily good or bad, it's just really bizarre.
Yes, the time-honored tradition of deciding which game to play. Donuts.
It actually makes sense in context later on, but that'd be a major spoiler. Also, it doesn't actually matter too much. Before the most important story part it matters for, they give you an outright choice. With that said, I picked the Soul Donuts because I'm an idiot who didn't research. See, I was under the impression this was like a definitive edition, that I'd be able to get yokai from either version, kinda like, and I hate to make this comparison, how in Pokemon Platinum you could get both Dialga and Palkia. I was thinking I'd be able to get the version exclusives from Fleshy Souls, which had some I really like. QB and Wide Awake and this Thunder Boy who looks like Len. Definitely not my Blondie bias or anything. Anyway, that's not the case. They're still version exclusive. Instead, this one has its own exclusives, and of course you trade for the missing ones. I really can't blame the game for that. It was totally 100% on me for not researching. With that said, I'm kinda over this whole version exclusive thing anyway. Here, Pokemon, everywhere. Except Fates. I'm fine with paying for new storylines, and those were discounted from buying the whole game a second time. I already mentioned the tutorial that follows after this, but I gotta say it lasts a bit too long for my liking. It's probably because I already played the first game and a lot of it is a rehash of that, but it just took way too long to get going. I was actually bored the first few chapters of the game. Again though, that's more of a specific problem. Perhaps the worst part though is that much like the first game, it doesn't do a great job of fully explaining all the mechanics, like how different yokai natures affect how they behave in battle. For anyone who didn't know, your team of yokai attack on their own. You're busy doing other things like using items, juggling targets, healing in-spirits, which are basically status conditions, and charging special moves called Sultimate moves. That's not to mention spinning your team around to swap between your team's front and back row. There is a written tutorial, which I do recommend you actually read because the in-game one is kind of terrible. In terms of yokai themselves, all the old favorites are back. Manjimud is still the best. We're kindred spirits, he and I. He's ugly on the outside, but has inner beauty, a heart true and unwavering. And me, well, I have the ugly part down. We even kinda look the same. Also, my boy Noko is back. But of course, would it really be a sequel without a ton of new yokai to befriend? There are nearly 200 new yokai, though I need to point out a problem I had with the first game. A lot of them are palette swaps. I hate this. There are some really cool new ones like Wide Awake and Zappery. Wide Awake is also the new official yokai mascot of this channel. I mean, look at him. He's a total bro with a hooded robe and a DS, and he doesn't sleep. He's basically just me as a yokai. Also, I now have a crush on a yokai. Nice. What can I say? He's cute and he's got blonde hair. In addition, this game introduces the classic yokai, which more closely resemble, you guessed it, the yokai found in classic Japanese folklore. As always, there's some that are cool, some cute, some just straight weird. I found a real butler, you've been replaced, Whisper. Actually, that was the plot to an anime episode as I recall. And finally, it adds plenty of new bosses and some new legendary yokai. I bet you can guess my favorite. Spoiler alert, it's Spoilerina, the yokai who spoils things. I've actually been spoiling her existence since my first Yokai Watch review. That's advanced spoilers. One of the worst parts about the first game was how hard it was to befriend new yokai. Thankfully, this has been improved upon here. Once you get far enough, you can poke a yokai when they're inspirited or loafing to get various effects, like extra cash or higher friendship odds. In addition, hovering the cursor over a yokai now shows what food they like. This is a massive improvement to the guessing game it was in the original. You can also get a held item through a mechanic known as sorcery, which I'll explain in just a sec, that increases odds of befriending, though it's pretty hard to get. With all that said, while there are more ways to influence friendship, it's still a bit too hard. I spent over 2 hours trying to befriend a C-rank yokai with all these factors. Yokai can get stronger by various means, such as evolution, yes, I know what you're thinking, don't say it, and fusion. Steven Universe fusion joke. I swear I already said all this for the first game. Finally, a new feature is the previously mentioned sorcery. In the original, you'd end up with several extra copies of yokai. Here, you can both trade them as well as use them for sorcery, wherein you turn that yokai's metal into a power-boosting stone. So essentially, sorcery equals crystallized friendship. This is cool as it gives a use to the yokai that would just be sitting there doing nothing. Hey, remember how people kept saying Yokai Watch was copying Pokemon? Well, in this one you can have a yokai follow you. Remember when Pokemon did that and it was awesome? Well, it's still awesome here. Huh. It's almost like that's a feature people like and Game Freak is full of morons who don't understand that. But heck, when have fans ever known what they like, am I right? The overworld is a lot more polished. There are more things to interact with. I'm not sure why, but I can brush my teeth. Toothbrushing Simulator 3D Extreme Toothbrushing Action! There are also optional puzzles and battling rooms that appear occasionally and can be found with your watch called Gates of Whimsy. You can even walk on ledges now, which opens up some more puzzles. And wait, there's an eating mini-game? What even is this? It's a timing game where you eat to the beat, all while incredibly awkward voice clips yell about how delicious it is. Am I gonna have to censor this?
Delicious! This is so good!
Aside from that, there are other mini-games, like more involved rhythm games, the returning hide-and-seek game, bike races, and even quizzes called Baffleboard. where you answer a riddle and then bring the respective yokai to the board to get some kind of effect. From unlocking a new building or area to a nickname changer. Some of these are mandatory too, so brush up on your yokai knowledge. Like the first game, this one still likes to restrict you to certain areas before plot demands you be there. This is done both with just blatantly telling you can't go certain places, and the watch gates from the original. In addition, there are now new key quests required to advance the story. At least you have a little more freedom earlier into the game than the first one. Unfortunately, because of the key quests, it feels more fetch questy than the original. Thanks to the time traveling, you also get to explore various areas in the past. Come on guys, everyone knows that if you time travel, you're not supposed to tell people about it. That's like rule 1 or something. Jeez, get with the times. Also, you'd think more people would freak out about my forward-thinking style. Well, this one guy noticed, but no one else seemed to care. Time traveling actually kinda fits here. I mean, yokai watch time? Yep, close enough. Not gonna question it. I already mentioned how you can trade. This game also has battling and some co-op minigames, and you can also link it to other versions, which unlocks some yokai. It also has some interaction with the original game. Unfortunately, you can't just trade yokai from the original forward. There's also a new superpowered form of ultimate move, M-Skill, and I know what you're about to say, don't, this actually came first. Yeah, it turns out that to get more powerful, all you gotta do is give it some moxie. In terms of difficulty, I'd say it's harder than the first. There are a few difficulty spikes, especially post-game. The final boss gave me way more trouble than the first games, and felt more involved. Embarrassingly enough, round 1 she swamped me, and round 2 was a long, engaging battle where I was juggling all my yokai, which felt great. Finally, I just want to say, beyond the main quest, there's a ton of side quests and an expansive post-game. I didn't even come close to finishing it all in time for this review, and I still did a good chunk of it. A lot of the side quests are still fetch questy, but it's nice to have more optional content. At long last, let's take a look at my final thoughts. Verdict. If you've ever considered Yokai Watch, this is actually a much better place to start than the first one. Much more polished, and some mechanics like befriending have been improved upon. That's without even getting into the expanded roster of available yokai. With that said, it still reuses a lot of stuff, which just comes across as lazy. I'd have liked to see a lot more new stuff. I had the most fun when I was just exploring, doing my own thing, and tackling side quests. That's fun, and there's a ton more of that to do from the first game, which already had a hefty amount. Unfortunately, the main story was... The first third was pretty much a tutorial, which is fine if you haven't played a Yokai Watch game before. And the rest pretty closely parallels the movie, which I already saw, so it was another case of retreading ground for me. Though ignoring that, this is a much more involved story with more interesting characters. I think if this was a totally new experience, my first Yokai Watch game, and having never seen the movie, it'd have been a lot more interesting. Don't get me wrong, this game is still pretty good, just in my particular case, it lacked that sense of newness and magic the first game had. This is still technically better, and I do recommend it over the original, just know for sure what version you want. It's still lighthearted and childish at times, a bit too much for some people's tastes even, but sometimes that's exactly what I need, because growing up sucks. I'd honestly much rather be out there trick-or-treating than being the one handing out candy. At least I live on a dead street.
So that's Yokai Watch 2, more specifically Psychic Specters. I know it's not the spookiest of games, but hopefully it at least satisfied your craving for a game review, because I'm not sharing this chocobar. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. Until next time, this is Hoodie Angel Brandon, wishing you all a happy Halloween. Mm-hmm.